secret is I just smile and say, live for today. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the sun came up and I gotta say, see it in a whole new way. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world, on top of the world. I'm sitting on top of the.
All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Leaders and Learners, where we all know that the best leaders are lifetime learners. They never assume they know everything. They continue to do their research. They continue to delve into the depths of the industry that they are in and shine a light for those of us that are still also learning. So today, I want to bring you one of my favorite leaders and learners. In our short time knowing each other, he's already enlightened me on so many things. And I love a good leader. So welcome, Ken Jacobs of Jacobs Consulting and Executive Coaching. Yes, executive coaching. Ken has helped agencies grow, improve on many levels by enhancing relationships. We've always talked about relationships, staff performance, communication, leadership skills for over, gosh, what, since 2007. So a couple decades now. I love it. He has empowered communication CEOs, presidents, executive vice presidents, and senior vice presidents to achieve and surpass their goals, not just get to their goals, but get past their goals. That takes an incredible amount of fortitude and knowledge on how the mind works, how the brain triggers you to move things to the next level. And I am so excited to have a leadership savant with me today, Ken Jacobs. Thank you so much for being here, Ken. Let the people know a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are now.
Well, first, thank you. It is great to be here. It's interesting. The coaching that I do is based in energy leadership, the Energy Leadership Index. And when we had we've known each other virtually, but when we had our getting to know you Zoom a few weeks ago, your positive energy just leaps through the laptop. And it is I always say it's a good thought, but it's a bad word to use nowadays. But energy is contagious, and that's true regardless of the times we live in. And you just have this beautiful, I call it a delicious energy that people, if they're open, can participate in and take it in and give it back to you. And I think that might be one of your life's missions, is just spread this beautiful, joyful energy. And I think we all can do that today and into the future when we get through all of this.
Absolutely. Thank
Yeah.
you.
To your question, I started in the agency business as a young pup, Newhouse graduate. I worked at an agency. I worked for two remarkable, iconic PR leaders who were glass ceiling breakers.
Mm.
Way Schoonover and Barbara Way Hunter. Yes, they were sisters.
Oh, wow.
And before I was there, they bought out the firm, DAY Public Relations. And around 1969, you really didn't have a lot of women agency owners in 1969. That broke the ceiling. And then the way they supported and elevated women, both their employees and their teams and their clients, was remarkable. Interestingly enough, I got a lot of opportunity there because I was one of the few young men there. So that created some opportunity for me. But it was a great experience. I went through the ranks quickly. That was good and not always good, and became part of my leadership journey. And I was in the business till 2006. And at that point, I did a whole reevaluation of the kind of career I wanted, what would be fulfilling, and create a life of abundance. And I came up with this plan of consulting, training, and coaching, primarily, but not only agencies, primarily PR, communications, marketing, advertising. And the change over the years, I always say the consulting was great. I got repeat business. I still do. Uh, I loved the training and being on your feet. And when you see the light bulbs go off, but coaching felt like a calling.
Hmm.
So coaching has become a bigger part of the business every year.
Now, coaching as opposed to consulting, walk me through that.
Yeah, very different actually. Um, so when I consult, and remember coming from a PR agency background, I was consulting with my clients, sure. So I was consulting, even in my agency days, but it is sharing your knowledge and your expertise and your good counsel based on your experience. In many ways, it's about the consultant, and we endeavor to bring value to our clients. And it tends to be with a group of agency leaders often, and it's about a vertical, what I call a vertical need. Business development. Here's how we're going to grow your business. Fiscal profitability, best
Mhm.
practices in fiscal profitability. We can help you get there. I'll tell you how. Hopefully, you'll listen to what I say, and that's great. And as we said earlier, client service communications leadership. That's consulting and training. I lead it. In coaching, very different. It is a client led endeavor, and the client signs up for as much progress as they want to make, as much change as they want to make. It is a client led endeavor. That's one very big difference. And I think the other big difference, as I mentioned, consulting, I and any consultant tells you what to do out of their own experience. In coaching, there's a methodology, there's a process, and we use empowering questions. Because if I'm telling Tonya, and I probably mispronounced your name at first, but now I remember it's Tonya, so correction. It made it into long-term memory, so that's always exciting. Um, if I really think you should do this, Tonya, you might, oh, Ken, you're my advisor. Yeah, I'm going to do it. How engaged are you really? How much skin do you really have in the game? But if I can ask you a question, it literally, or any of my coaching clients, a question, it lights up a different part of the brain. You will focus on that question, and it focuses the part of the brain. It literally lights up where passion and engagement and curiosity are. So we're on a much different journey now. You're gonna get there because your brain is now passionate and committed. So as an agency professional, my background was primarily consulting, and then earlier in my solo business, it was more consulting. I have a mantra to remind me, and that mantra is don't tell, ask.
Mm.
If I can fight the urge to tell and come up with a question that will allow you to figure it out, that's a much greater gift that I'm giving you. That's really empowering. And
So that
so,
trigger that opens up the mind to engaging deeper into that action that needs to be taken. Is it temporary? And how do you keep it from being fleeting?
right. So it can be both. There is a release of hormones when that happens. So it does get the person going. But then, to very good question about how do you keep it going? You then would ask the client, well, what actions will you take? What commitments will you make? By when will you do that? So you go from idea or dream to goal into action plan. And that's an important thing a good experienced coach will do, will help their client go from dream to goal to action plan. What will I do and by when? And generally you do it before our next coaching session. So they start working out the plan. Sometimes people hire me and say, I want you to hold me accountable. And I'll say, I'm going to give you a better gift. What if I empower you to hold yourself accountable?
Mm.
That's what it's about. Ultimately, you're not going to need me, and that's just fine. But I will say, how can I support you in that? And they might say, look for my email next Thursday where I tell you what I've done.
Mm-hmm.
So it's much stronger because, again, they've committed action, deadline, how will you hold yourself accountable? How can I support you? That's very different than consulting. And I think, honestly, it's more powerful because of the neuroscience behind it.
So would consulting be considered more specific, where coaching is more general and vast?
Well, yes and no, because to your point, we're consulting on a specific thing
Mhm.
and biz dev, profitability, whatever. But we want coaching to be specific too. When we work with clients, they create, and I give them a little help, coaching engagement goals. They'll say the 5 or 6 things that describe them as a leader 6 months hence when the coaching engagement is over, at least phase one. And when they describe themselves, so let's say we have I'm working with a leader who from feedback has learned their people don't feel they're trusting, their people don't feel they delegate well. So they may create a goal and they write it in the future as if it's happened, right? I'm a trusting and trusted leader. In my 360 reports, my peers or my team report that they feel trusted by me, that they know I have their backs, and I'm an effective delegator who lets them fly. So it's a very positive statement. So those are maybe 5 or 6 things we'll work on. The idea is after the 6 months, that's a snapshot of you as a leader if you've done the work and if I've been a good coach. So it actually can be quite specific because that's what ties into helping a client achieve and surpass their goals. And it can be their organizational goals, career goals, personal goals. But
Yes.
it's specific.
So, like you, I coach and consult, but I want you to talk to the listeners and let them know how they decide if they need coaching or consulting or both and how they figure that out.
So I've had some engagements that are a little of both. I've had some engagements where we start talking about, can you help me in biz dev? Can you help me in profitability, whatever? And in the discussions, I sense, like many leaders, unfortunately, their people don't trust them, or they don't trust their people, or they are not effectively delegating, or they're micromanaging. I mean, the list goes on and on. We all know what those things are. And I know that if they do the inner work first, if they do the coaching first, if they focus on those bigger things like being trusted, respecting your people and being respected more than liked even as a leader, I know that if they can make progress there, then whatever, the consulting things are management, right? Those things we mentioned are management. I know that if they step up as a leader and I empower them and I help them to do that, that whatever management changes they want to make, it'll be so much more effective. Why? Because you don't do it alone. And if you're an effective leader, people are behind you, following you by choice. They're in the, and I'll give you a cliche alert. I use cliches all the time. Why? They stood the test of time. We all know what they mean. So I love a cliche. I love a good cliche. So when you either turn around and see them marching gladly behind you, or they're all in the proverbial rowboat rowing together,
Mhm.
it's going to be easier to become a more profitable agency. It's going to be easier to get everyone involved in a business development or new business endeavor. It's going to be easier to step up on client service. So I encourage the coaching first, but it's always the client's decision. Now, I'll tell you, I had one case, an adored client hired me for business development, but I sensed there was something going on. I sensed there was something with lack of confidence. And so as we did biz dev, we were making some progress, but in business development in the agency world anyway, there are a lot of asks you have to make. You may have to ask a recent or former client for an active referral. You may have to ask a prospect for a meeting, or in these days, a Zoom meeting, right? It takes some guts. And the biz dev effort on which we were consulting was stalling. And I knew it was because I trusted my instinct. So again, it's always up to the client. But I said, something's come up for me. May I share with you? Always ask permission before you share. Because that too, we're talking about the brain. When you ask permission for something that of course you can do, it opens them up. It builds down, it knocks down defensiveness. It opens. Of course I want to hear it. I said, when I met you, we started talking about biz dev, but I sensed something was going on with confidence. Let's do a classic coaching engagement. And I don't recall if we did 3 months or 6, purely on that. Let's build you up your confidence. And we did that. And then we re-engaged consulting biz dev and she had a stellar year. She beat not only her ambitious goals, she beat her stretch goals. And that was a little bit me trusting my instinct as a coach of what was going on, and her being willing and being open and acknowledging, yeah, until we work on this, I'm not going to make my numbers.
Wow.
And the beautiful thing is, she's a biz dev rock star now, and we partnered on that confidence of walking into, let me make it more positive, walking into her courage. That stayed with her. That's who she is now as a leader. So anybody considering a career in coaching, you want to talk about fulfilling?
That's amazing. When you have, Ken, when you have people that are struggling with confidence, what have you noticed is the trend? What is usually holding them back?
Yeah. So
And
what
for
I
everybody
always say,
that's listening, if you have confidence issues, I want you to listen to this because it might be hindering you. But what is the trend for people that are struggling with confidence?
so let me just do a little bit of setup. Here we are in the PR, communications, marketing, advertising agency world. We're asking for budgets of 50 grand, 100 grand, $500,000, $1 million. You're asking for big numbers. You'd think and I say we because I'm a former agency vet, right? Or I'm a former agency guy. I'm an agency vet. You'd think we'd be the bravest people on earth. Not the case. And I think for many, it's imposter syndrome. I'm not really supposed to lead an agency. I'm not really worthy. Deep down, we call it a gremlin that is interfering. I don't deserve this success. And so when that is an issue, whether it is imposter syndrome, lack of confidence, it's not fear of failure for the most part, it's fear of success. I see people, and I did this too before I was coached, where we trip ourselves up because deep down, we don't believe we deserve it. We don't believe we're ready to lead. And it's very prevalent. So I say the bad news is there are a lot of people in the agency business with imposter syndrome or fear. The good news is if you're open and ready, a coach can help you. And once you walk through that and you're in your courage, and I had to do it too, boy, life changes. Life changes obviously for the better.
Doesn't that feel good though, when you're able to watch something that you have helped produce actually enter into its reality and shows itself?
Well, I tell you, I got it, as I mentioned, got in the agency business early, had a lot of success early. I was running, the company doesn't exist anymore. It was General Foods, which I guess now is part of Kraft, but I was running $2 million of General Foods business by my late 20s. And that was a lot of money for agency budgets then, trust me. It was more than it is now. So I had a lot of early success, and then things did not really work out towards the end. So I had to do that reevaluation. So my point in all this is it took me till age 50 to really figure out what I was meant to do. I thought it was to be an agency manager leader. But when I really looked honestly at the tail end of my career and what I was really called to do, it was serving agencies through consulting, training, and coaching. And the joy from that, thank God I figured it out by 50, but I figured it out, you know,
I love
so.
that. I love that. I spoke with a group yesterday. I was doing a leadership training, and we were talking about really excelling in your leadership, right? And many of them were struggling with their title. So entering into maybe a nonprofit or a service organization, and they struggle with their title. And I was trying to get across to them that you don't necessarily have to have a certain title to lead. So talk to me and talk to the audience about the difference between leadership and management, whether it's in a service organization or a business that you're in.
It's completely different, and it's a shame we mix them up. You know, I think, and I'll speak just more to the corp agency side, just because it's where I grew up, so to speak. Though my clients were all corporate, so you know I know that world. You know, first you become sort of a trainee, then a practitioner, then a manager. But if you think about it, you're managing things. You're managing communications programs, budgets, resources, production schedules, getting the train out of the station and to the next station on time and on budget at a certain quality level. Management is great. It's great to be a manager. Leadership is something different. You're leading people. You're accepting the mantle of leadership, and people are choosing to follow you. Remember, people may report to you on an org chart. That's fine. Your name may be on their check, their paycheck. That's fine. But they do get to choose to follow you or not. They can come in every day, check off the to-do list, do what they said they do, but following is a very different endeavor. And so I think one thing where the PR agency in business has miles to go is that we promote people because they're great at PR nowadays, because they're great at social and digital and content and all that stuff. And they're great with prospects. Maybe they bring in new business. They're great with clients. And the budgets are coming in, but we have a revolving door of people who don't want to work for you because we've promoted you into leadership because you've been a great practitioner, manager, PR pro, but we haven't really looked at, are people choosing to follow? But I don't blame the person in that role, because if they haven't been trained in leadership and how different it is than management, you know, it's not their fault. Let's not blame them.
Management's fault.
Yeah, yeah. And so, you know, some people aren't meant to make I think most leaders, most have been good managers, but some managers are not meant to make the step to leadership. And so we should be fine with that and put them in more vertical roles where they're in charge of a thing, but not leading people. I didn't even want to say in charge of people. You're not in charge of people, but, you know, not in a role where it is about your leadership. But we can all get better.
Even these days, you can lead a movement within an agency without being in a management position. So I've even, you see these micro movements going on in certain agencies, whether it's to elevate a particular story, to move something forward. In service organizations, now in civil unrest that we've had, people are leading movements without being in a managerial position. So I really wanted to take the emphasis off of titles and bring it back to what leadership actually looks like, and then what it feels like. What it feels like to people, and how you trigger that in people to really want to follow you and follow what you say and trust what you're advising them to do.
You used a very important word, which is feel. This is a feeling, emotional thing. And I always try to give a tip of the hat to my dear friend, Annie Heckenberger, who started in PR and media relations, moved into digital and social. She's in Philadelphia now. She led the social side of the 2016 convention.
Mm-hmm.
But what I want to share is when we were both at Marina Mar Communications, and Annie, I hope you're listening. She was this living example that leadership has nothing to do with title. I would say she was a senior AE in those days. and she brought forth information. She brought forth passion. She shared knowledge.
Mm.
People naturally glommed to her. She was so influential as a leader because she loved sharing knowledge. She loved helping people succeed. In those days, it was a lot about pop culture. That was her thing, and she loved it. And people followed her, and I followed her in many ways. So she is just my prime example that it is not about the title, the salary, the corner office. It's, because if she may not even been aware of this then. I don't know. We'll ask her. But she would turn around. She would see followers, I'm sure, because of that. She's my prime example of that.
I love that. And speaking of leadership, I want you to talk to me about why it's so important right now in these uncertain times to excel, step into your leadership, feel comfortable with that, and lead right now.
Yeah. You know, these have been, I won't call them challenging times. I refuse to. First of all, for anyone who's lost a loved one or friend, it is
Mm.
beyond challenging. So let me acknowledge that. For the rest of us, I don't, no matter what, try not to see it as challenging, because once you see it as challenging, you manifest that and you will feel challenged. So I tend to think of it as uncertain times. But I also believe when there's uncertainty, there's opportunity. There's opportunity for growth. You can grow, you can help your role in your organization, you can help people in your organization. It is a great, important opportunity to lead yourself and lead others. And people need leadership now so much. It is the time to step up and lead. And again, lead both yourself and your family and your peers and your boss. Let's remember your boss, your leaders. These are uncertain times for many, many people. So if you, I don't even believe in managing up, you're leading up, because that boss you're leading up, you're not managing them. You're using your influence, you're supporting them, you're leading them. The one important point I want to make about that is self-care
Mm.
is so important now. If you've done self-care before, whether it's meditation, yoga, mindfulness, exercise, walking every day outdoors, get that sun, get that wind. Well, now it's cold, but to the degree you can, and well, don't I have to lead my people first? No, self-care first. It's like when you're on the airplane and they say put on your oxygen mask before you put it on your fellow travelers. It's the same thing. You only have so much energy
Yes.
and leadership energy. And if you're filling your cup, you can then take care of others. So, I think we should all do self-care because we should. But if you won't do it for yourself, do it for others. Do it so you can lead the people around you.
Yes. Listen, you've used a word a couple of times, and I want to jump off script a little bit.
Why
You
not?
saying influence. What do you think of influencers right now? I want you to kind of walk me through someone that has been through agency life, and you're leading people that are working on organizations that now are they're moving around with influencers. What are your
That,
thoughts on influencers?
I don't know, because, the PR business has changed so much since I was in it in 2006. And even though I face the agency world and I support the agency world, and almost all my clients are from the agency world, not all, but many, we don't talk a lot about PR and how or communications or integrated communications as it's practiced today. If it's consulting, it's in those verticals I mentioned before.
Mhm.
It's not about the practice of PR. I think PR is so much harder now and so much more challenging now. Now, in a way, it's easier because we have all these channels we can use, but Lord knows how I could keep up. So, and if you're in a true coaching and a process and using empowering questions and those other things, I don't really coach them around PR. So, my notion of influence is much more under the leadership or energy umbrella, where
Mm,
you look at, what's really the best outcomes for my organization, for my teams, peers, clients, stakeholders, and bosses or boss, and how can I contribute to that? How can I use my positive energy to achieve what we all want to achieve? That to me is influence. That when I think of influence, that's the definition of it. Um, and it's funny. Uh, you would think that I coach my clients around PR. I don't. Fortunately, many of them say, I feel more comfortable coaching with you because you get PR, you get the agency environment. I just feel more comfortable. Some are kind enough to say, I've worked with other leadership or executive or business coaches. I can use a shorthand with you that I don't use with them. So that's like gravy. That's extra, I suppose. But um,
so the reason I
maybe
bring
I should stay on top of things like influencers and TikTok and all the.
Actually, no. The reason I bring it up is, again, I had this conversation with a young man who just, he gets sidetracked a lot, and it seems to be by influencers. So, this person, and I told him, I said, influencers to me are like little sparkly things that are hanging around, and they distract you from the
Oh,
purpose,
maybe.
from your goal, from what it is that you're really supposed to be doing. So, getting someone in their corner like you to help them really hone back in on their focus and their goal makes more sense than following the influencers and the sparkly little things that it seems gimmicky that continue to fall out of the sky. It's so hard for professionals these days, I think, to stay focused because so many things are, I'm going to try this class and this course and this little sparkly thing and follow this influencer who's selling coaching but doesn't have a certificate. Just so many different things that seem to be grabbing at your attention. And the true uh, results driven practices are not getting the credit that they should and getting the attention that they should to help people really succeed in their goals and aspirations.
Yeah. Well, I think, there's always been the shiny new penny, the shiny new toy. And I think it is more valuable to think about the bigger things, leadership, emotional intelligence, learn a little bit about neuroscience because we can use it in coaching, you can use it in your leadership.
Yeah.
I think the ultimate test, the ultimate, you know, high point is, are you leading people? Do they feel your influence? Do they feel respected by you? Are you helping them succeed? Do you accept that as a leader, you only succeed when everyone around you succeeds? So that to me are the key drivers of success. In fact, both Harvard Business Review, I think, or the Harvard Business School, and Google did studies about who's really having stellar careers here, who's surpassing their goals, who's achieving beyond achievement. And even at a company like Google, something like 90% of those leaders they analyzed that were just stellar. It wasn't about technology and that kind of knowledge, even at a Google. It was about emotional intelligence and other, I hate when we call it the soft skills, the leadership skills. And, let's stop calling them soft skills. Let's call them critical skills.
Critical
Let's
skills.
call them people skills. Let's come up with something else, I think. And we all do it. We call it soft skills. They're powerful skills. So if you do want to be an effective leader, agency, corporate, nonprofit, government, who have I missed? Higher ed,
Yes.
work on your leadership.
Law enforcement.
That if that you mentioned in the beginning, learners learn about leadership, learn about emotional intelligence. It will serve you so well.
Hmm. I love that. Well, listen, I have taken up enough of your valuable time, but I want to make sure that the people know how to get in touch with you, how to get assistance from you,
Yeah.
and what you have coming up, sir.
Yeah. So a couple of things. So I'll spell it. My website is www.jacobscomm as in Mary.com, jacobscom.com, or you can reach me at ken at jacobscomm as in Mary.com. And if you go to my website, there's a contact me page. I encourage people, obviously, to go to the website. We have something called Taking the Lead, where it's
Mm.
sort of a video podcast and we interview leaders. They're from the PR and communications world, both agency and corporate, but we interview them because I respect them as leaders. That's what's so I think they'll get great value from seeing those. And in early January, we are coming out with leadership ebook number 3.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's very exciting for us. And I guess I can preview it here. Would you like to be the first?
I would love it.
Oh my God. First, you heard it here first, kids. You're like in
Yes.
the 1940s. Hey, kids, you heard it here
You're,
first.
you're
Um,
first.
it's about leading the leaders on your team. And it's
Mm.
especially for those who are now at a position where they're not just leading teams and individuals, they have people under them who are leaders or leaders in training or future leaders. And we'll be discussing some techniques that you can use when you're at that point in your career, because that's a whole other thing when you're leading people who are stars. They're stars and they're leaders. How do you bring the best out of them and to them? So we thought that would be a great way to kick off 2021. And it'll be on the website.
I am excited about that. I'm going to make sure I tell everybody about it. I was working with the police department yesterday, and they were talking about, the different tests that you have to go through to promote. And one of those is actually learning to lead leaders. So I'm going to share that with them. I think that's important. Good stuff.
I appreciate that. Well,
Absolutely. So, and you can also find him on Twitter. I love
at
following
Ken
him on
at
Twitter.
Ken's Views, right? Am I at Ken's Views? Yes.
Yes.
Because that's on Twitter where I share my views. And obviously I'm LinkedIn and we have a Facebook business page. I'm easy to find. I hope at this point I'm easy to find. I better be,
Accessible
right? Yeah.
and incredible. And I want to thank you again for spending your time with my audience. I want to thank you for taking the time for little old me. And I appreciate you out in cyber world continuing to spread knowledge and education on why leadership is so important.
It's my joy and my passion. And thank you for inviting me. And thank you for your wonderful energy. And let's both keep spreading it.
Absolutely. You guys, happy holidays. Thank you
Thanks.
guys for tuning in. Have a good one.
Take care.